Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the Ponderama. Hope you're having a good day, a good week, a good month, even, dare I say, a good year. Oh, that's so funny. Oh, I'm excited to do this Ponderama. I apologize for a few weeks going by between the episode that I recorded with Rich Logis about leaving MAGA and this Ponderama, but I I was planning the whole time to lead a retreat in Sedona in the middle of October. And so that took a lot of bandwidth from me the week before, and obviously the week during, and the week after. Had to recover a bit. So here I am now to do this Ponderama, and very happy to do this one. It feels very personal to me in some ways, not in the way that you think it would, because I'm not leaving MAGA, but all of the themes that Rich and I talked about in the episode feel familiar to me. And so I wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about those themes and generally the theme of change, which, as you know, this is what this podcast is about. Change is happening every microsecond, whether we like it or not. So I wanted to remind you a little bit about what Rich and I talked about. And so I'm just going to read to you the introduction I gave to the last podcast, because it really works for this still. So it says, as you know, I am fascinated with change, individual and collective change. What does it really take to change our direction in life? How do we learn to see the beliefs and sense of identity that keeps us from changing? How are we living into our values, what we truly find meaningful in life when we change? Are our values preserved, refined? Do they evolve? Why is it so hard to change? And what happens in life when we've made some choice that sends one on a direction that ends up reshaping like every area of our life? So that could be certainly a relationship that you choose, a career path, an addiction, and also becoming a member of a part of a cultural group that leaves you separate from people that you once were around. So these things, these choices send us in a direction that really does reshape every area of our life, to the point that some important parts of our life can feel alien to us, no longer safe and welcoming, and how we then silo those parts off, right? We eliminate those people or places or things, and we live in this kind of new world that we've chosen. But then one day, usually it's a slow burn at first, we wake up to see that we've made some sort of a wrong turn somewhere, an error, a direction that is not the one we want. We suddenly see that it isn't what we thought it was. And then we need to recorrect our course and make a new choice. But because we've kind of reshaped our life for a while, and relationships and all sorts of things, that we're afraid. We're afraid to admit that we made a mistake. And we're afraid that those who we once connected to and felt deeply resourced by, loved, connected to, family, that they may have moved on from us. and that if we do come back around, that they will have permanently rejected us and no longer see all of us, just the part of us that made this choice that probably wasn't the best for ourselves. So I just wanted to talk about that, because that for me is so much about what keeps us from change. But, there's two things that happen, right? There's the risk of the change. There's the risk of the new direction and seeing all the ways it solves our problems in that moment. And then there's the quiet awakening of, oh dear, this is not the right thing. So I'm going to use an example in my life that really stood out to me when I was re-listening to the podcast, because when I'm in the interview with the person, I'm kind of thinking a little bit about these kind of extra things in my life, or these areas of my life that might relate to. But it was such a specific relationship and specific conversation with Rich that I was like, well, I didn't join MAGA, so I don't understand this, but I do understand the other parts of it. Certainly the human parts of it, the human on the Verge part, right? And when I thought about it, as I was re-listening to the episode, was that this is how I felt during my first marriage in my late teens, early 20s. I didn't get married in my late teens, but I was with the guy starting at 18. And like Rich was talking about, this initial attraction he had was, on the surface, this direction, this man, Trump in his case, checked some boxes for him, important boxes that kind of aligned with his values. And he saw in him that, because Rich was an independent voter, he saw a person who was technically independent also. He wasn't a member of either party, and either party at that time were picking, it was Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton. It was the old guard, right? And boy, that wasn't going to work, especially after Obama. Like, what? We're going backwards again? Like, how crazy. And so many independent voters, actually, that voted for Obama, a lot of them voted for Trump because of this, because they were like, it was such a change. It was, they're change voters. Now, of course, when I met my first husband, his name was Andrew. I was 18. He was 29. And I had been in a couple of relationships in high school. I had been in a relationship with a young man who I was, I would say, pretty addicted to. He was very charming, very bright, very funny, very gorgeous blue eyes. I was very much in need of him wanting me and completing me. I was, yeah. And I, looking back on it, I don't have a lot of memory of it actually, because it was such a crazy, chaotic time in my life. But I know that I had a big part to play in what went wrong in that relationship, because I was very needy, such a needy young girl. Oh, just breaks my heart how needy I was. And I think that was a lot for him. It doesn't excuse his behavior. He did some things that were pretty nasty. He would be pretty nasty to me verbally, and a few times did harm me in rage, physically. And I'm not blaming the victim here, but I also know that he didn't act like that with anybody else. So it was kind of a weird kind of a thing. So I'd been in a very, very insane, high octane relationship with him, where it was like, meeting secretly to have sex, and I wasn't being responsible around that. I got pregnant numerous times. uh, which was fully my responsibility, and I do take full responsibility for that. But it was a very dark time for me, like age 16 through 18. And I was with him for a few years, and it was very intense, really insane. And I told my parents none of this stuff. Like, I was so secretive about it. And that's really where I have to take responsibility for it. Was I did not. I felt so much shame and confusion about all of that I didn't know how to reach out to my parents. So I kept it secret, all of that stuff. And then I was with a really, really nice guy, really, really nice guy. Uh, Kind of dream come true. He was a lead singer in a local band, really cute. Also, I got to be the girlfriend of the guy singing in the band. It was, who doesn't want to be the girlfriend of the rock star? And he was so sweet. He came from a big Catholic family, just really good values, lovely guy. But I got, admittedly, it wasn't enough excitement for me. Strangely, it just wasn't the right match. And we're still good, dear friends to this day. So I'd had a rough kind of experience in my teen years and was very confused. And so by 18, I was not really looking for anybody, but I was both looking for someone who would love me and adore me, who isn't going to look for that, but also someone who wasn't, someone who was just a little more worldly or something like that. I don't even know what I was looking for. I was probably just looking for excitement. I ended up meeting this person I ended up marrying, and two things happened for us right away. We were, it's so crazy. We bonded deeply, and we bonded deeply over a large amount of cocaine. It happened in 1981. That's kind of what you did. And I was still definitely using and partying a lot back then. And he was an older man. He was 11 years older than me. And there was a maturity to that really, I was always kind of mature, in some ways, mature for my age, and others clearly not. We got together very quickly. And there were 10,000 red flags at the beginning of this relationship. Obviously, the cocaine use, also the fact that he was, when I met him, he told me he was married, but he was waiting a year to get his inheritance from his grandmother so he could pay off his wife and be done with his marriage, because they didn't have a marriage anymore. They barely even spoke in the same room. And then the other thing was that he had a 2.5-year-old kid. And I was like 18. It was insane, you guys. You guys, I was having a form of insanity. And this is why I kind of saw this Rich's story in our conversation in me so clearly, because there's ways in which we search for things that help us complete ourselves in some way. And there are ways in which we completely ignore all the signs around us. Like, there are just parts of our interior self that just close the door on rationality or being able to see clearly, because we want the other thing so badly. I wanted to be loved and adored and be with an older man who was going to shape me. This guy told me how I was a great talent and beautiful, and he was going to make me not make me a star, but he was. I know people in casting and all this kind of stuff. And I had just been looking for someone my entire life to say, I see you, I see your talent, I know what you're about, let me help you. I wanted that relationship. I wanted to be discovered on the stool of Schwab's, like the famous Judy Garland story is. I so wanted that because I didn't know who I was. I've never, we've talked about identity on this podcast before. I have a hard time being able to see who I am and what my gifts are. I know I have them, and I see them a lot more now. Certainly, I'm 62. But at that time, I just wanted someone to say, I just wanted someone to pick me. Please pick me. So I ignored a lot of red flags. And I had just dropped out of UCLA also, and I dropped out because I didn't even know what they were called, but I was having panic attacks. I didn't understand that I was probably needing some sort of different kind of therapy to help regulate my nervous system. And I was just overwhelmed at UCLA. I'd gone to a very small private school, Crossroads. There were 32 people in my graduating class, and suddenly I show up at UCLA and there's 500 people in the first lecture, and I like lost it. So I was in a fight or flight state a bit at the time, and then add cocaine to that, and you really got that. So I felt like this person was a raft for me. Like, I can get on board this, and this person's going to take me to the promised land. And it's funny because it's kind of what Rich felt about Trump in that way, that it was like, oh, this guy is, who is playing the role for me. He's the independent outsider, and he's going to help this country, thumb their noses to those in power and lead us to the promised land. So I think step number one is a sense of desperation to feel complete or seen or taken care of by someone, and that they're going to lead us to the promised land. I think that's the first red flag here in our lives. And this could be with a career too. Think about it, right? Some of us have signed on to things, gone in a direction because it's going to lead us to the promised land, which could be wealth, could be getting the respect of our parents, could be getting the respect of our peers, could be getting, if I have enough power, I'll be in the promised land. So it's all a little tricky, this promised land thing. And so I did. I moved in. This guy moved in with me into my parents' house. You can read the full detail. There's a whole chapter or two about this in my memoir, A Carlin Home Companion. And of course, I immediately had this feeling in my stomach at times, which was like, I can't believe I'm doing this, but I've kind of already said yes to it. So already I had a fear of, if I were to say no, I was going to disappoint a lot of people. One of the first being Andrew, this person I was saying yes to, and he was fun. This guy had this guy was all fun. Fun and distraction was his name. He liked exciting things. He liked to do things, and I love new experiences, and so that was fun. My mom was a big adventurer, so she kind of dug his adventurous kind of nature. My dad, God bless my dad, he just said yes to me all the time. Like, he was just so afraid to say no to me. And he really wanted me to be okay. And he knew I'd gone through a lot in my childhood with all their craziness and stuff. So there was a lot of codependency there. And but he, Andrew was a guy who could also, had an amazing mechanical mind, could fix anything, build anything. Truly. And so he's very handy. And my dad loved that. My dad loved having someone handy around who could take care of things that my dad couldn't take care of. So Andrew kind of fulfilled that role. So we were all kind of getting our needs met by Andrew in our own way while ignoring all the red flags. And I just said yes and yes and yes over and over and over again to things, ways of being that I knew were not right for me. I mean, really, the amount of cocaine that was coming through my room and up my nose and into my system was just a ridiculous amount, and some scary, risky things we did around that. So I knew that my values were not being honored, and I had kind of just given up on having an adult life. I just was like, oh, this is easier than having to figure out how to go to school or what I'm doing. And I really did want to be part of Hollywood at that time. I really wanted to be. I loved production. I'd worked in production since I was 15. I loved the feel of being on a set. And I also wanted to express myself, but I didn't have any confidence. I didn't know who I was. So all of this just really just kind of aligned with all of my own brokenness and my own desires also. So there I was, stuck in this world that I had created for myself and seeing enough of the red flags, but feeling powerless to do anything about it. It's such a hard place to be. This is a place where we feel really out of control. And there's like two parts of us. There's the part that's in and ignoring all the messages, the red flag messages. And then there is the part that is seeing all of that and living inside of us somewhere, but we're really keeping it in the basement. And that in and of itself is a place of great anxiety, right? That's where we feel torn apart, the overwhelm of emotion that can be running through us, and a constant buzz or a constant level of shame happening inside of us. And so really what we're doing is we're managing the shame. That's what it feels like to me, where the thought comes, holy shit, what am I doing here? Shame is high, which, shame is normally a thing that we feel is bad, but shame is like a real aspect of our human emotion toolkit to help us wake up to something like, hey, you're stomping on your own values here on some level. Of course, shame can be also come from a place within us that sees us as worthless, a piece of shit. And that's when we really like load on ourselves, right? So shame comes up, which can help us be like, oh, I'm not living into my values. And then as we continue to not live into our values, I think what happens, and I'm not an expert on this stuff, but I'm just sourcing it from my own inner life here. But then the shame really piles on and it becomes self-hatred. And that's when it gets dangerous, because now the self-hatred feeds into the behavior that is not good for us, which the shame which triggered the shame to begin with. So we kind of go almost more all in with the addictive behavior or the codependence or whatever it is. It's like this really vicious cycle that happens. And so we're in this vicious cycle where a part of us is seeing clearly but has no agency, and then there's this other part that just keeps feeding the situation. And for me, that led to very, very serious panic attack syndrome. Like it shut me down. It shut my whole life down. I could not drive anywhere, and I had quit cocaine at this point in the relationship because this is a few years in, almost 5 years in, actually, now that I think about it, 86, 80, yeah, something around there. And because I knew that my nervous system literally couldn't take the drug itself. And I was feeling now a ton of shame and craziness about this. So not only did I have the secret of being miserable in my marriage, because I'd now married this guy at age 22. I married him 4 years into the relationship because I thought, oh, if I marry him, he'll grow up. He'll become an adult, the adult that I really need him to be and want him to be. And that didn't happen. I'm not going to go into detail about it, but if you like I said, if you read my book, you'll see what that moment was like for me. But now I had the shame also of the panic attacks, and I couldn't tell my mom or dad about the panic attacks because I thought if I did that, then I was admitting that I was in the bad relationship and I was in the wrong there. So I just kept my mouth shut. And, my modus operandi was, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm fine. Clearly, I was not fine. I looked like hell during these years. So all that shame, all of that. And then there's this thing that happens in this situation where we feel the effort to maintain the fallacy is way, way harder and damaging than the effort to try to get out of it. And we realize that we have to save our own lives. That this cannot be, we can't do it anymore. We can't do it another moment, another minute, another day. And that's I think that's one of the scariest times. I mean, it's each parts of these things are hard, but this is super hard now because now we are faced with facing and walking through a process that we've been avoiding the whole time. I mean, wouldn't it have been easier for me 6 months into the relationship, even though he had moved in and all that kind of stuff was going on in my parents' house, where if I would just said, you know what, I made a silly mistake. This is ridiculous, and I need to get on with my life. Like, I didn't have the courage to do that, even though I saw the red flags. And part of that was because I believed that this was going to work out. He was going to change. This guy was going to get to the promised land. But, once you get to a point where you're like, oh, there is no promised land, there really isn't. Like, you cannot deny it, that this person is not growing up. He's not an adult. He's still doing behavior that's insane, drugs and lying and all sorts of things, not taking any responsibility in his life for any choice he's ever made, blames the world all the time. And you and me too. Like, like you really see like, oh boy, I'm really in this. And yet the pain of staying is suddenly bigger than the fear of admitting you made a mistake. So the pain of staying is bigger than the fear of change. And this is the moment for all of us. It doesn't have to be this big of a decade-long experience, but this is the moment of change where they say in AA, you get sick and tired of being sick and tired of yourself. And courage. There's some sort of courage that comes forward. There's some part of us wakes up that trusts in something. And it's still terrifying. It's still not going to be easy. It's still going to be messy, super messy. But for me, really that moment came when I realized that I had slowly been moving towards preparing myself to leave when I ended up going back to school in 80, I think it was 87. I'd been away for 7 years. It must have been 88. 7 years from UCLA. I got back in and I was a freshman. And I knew, like, I'd woken up at that age at like 25, where I'd been married to him for 3 years. And he'd gotten sober and all sorts of things. I mean, we both had, but I knew I had to get a foundation underneath me in order to have the strength, to have the power to move on. And so I had gone back to school and I was slowly separating from him. I was not spending my days with him. I was not part of his world anymore. I really kind of shut down. So I was at UCLA, I was going to school, I was finding myself. I found my passion and my joy again, which was so important, which was school, learning. Like, it had a structure, I knew what was expected of me. I loved learning. From day one, I loved learning as a kid. I'm endlessly curious. I love learning new things. And so I was really fortifying myself in a big way. And that was wonderful. And yet I knew the day was coming where I was kind of playing for time at that point. It was like, well, at least I'm having fun over here and I'm getting what I want and I'm moving towards being an adult at 25 finally. But, then I would come home into this house, which was just a mess, and he was a mess, and his kid was a mess. His kid was a special needs kid and was really challenging. Lovely, but just innocent, wonderful child, and yet had a lot of behavioral issues. And I just saw that this was not the life I was going to live for the rest of my life. And and so I knew that there was going to come a day when I would have to talk to him and let him know this. And I was afraid. He was a little crazy, my ex. He was very into guns. And he would say things just kind of offhand, like, I love you more than anything in the universe. And if I could never have you, I don't know what would happen. And things like that. He was very possessive, very controlling of me, had to know where I was every hour of the day. I never had spent the night away from him until I was 26 years old. I mean, it was just really crazy kind of stuff and very insecure. And I remember hitting a point. I was so afraid to talk to him, but I had to get to a point, again, another low inside of me, a different kind of low this time, which was, I thought to myself, I either am going to tell him and leave, or I'm going to kill myself. Like, that's how bad it had to get. It was like, I was like, I'm going to tell him and leave, and he's going to do something crazy, maybe, I don't know. Or I'm going to have to end this because I literally could not live another day that way. And it was so terrifying for me because I had to, at this point, I wanted to tell my mom what was going on. And one of the things that Rich and I talked about was that fear of people judging us. And also, while we're in it, we know people are judging us. I lost all of my friends. They all left. My whole community and sense of self were gone because they couldn't stand my husband and his way of being with them. And so I was just, and I'd already had a kind of a up and down relationship with my mom anyway, from her alcoholism in my childhood, and we had mended a little bit, but I was always so afraid of her judgment. And then I was really afraid of my dad's judgment, although, they also showed me many, many times over and over again that they loved me and they forgave me. And so I knew that they would forgive me in the end. And so I finally did tell my mother, and it was such a relief when I did. And yet it was also like, oh, fuck, now I have to do this. It was so terrifying. And so I'll tell you the little story of the night I decided to tell him that I was leaving. So I'd gotten my courage up. It took about 10 days to get my courage up. And I kind of decided, it was I think it was on a Wednesday or something like that. I was like, this is the night I'm going to tell him and everything like that. And we woke up, and it was the day that the LA riots broke out. And suddenly we were in a citywide curfew, and he had come out into the living room and slammed a shotgun on our living room table and said, they're coming for our stuff. I'm not going to let them. And which was just horrifying that he was saying that. And I was like, oh my God. And now I'm like, oh shit, I'm locked in this house with a crazy man with a shotgun. Did not tell him that night. Waited a few weeks till the city calmed down. And I finally did tell him. And he, of course, had no idea, didn't understand all that kind of stuff. And I softened the blow even then. But what happened internally for me was that I ended up leaving him pretty much there and then. And I had a very, very long time of living with regret, living with a lot of shame and regret. I had been with him for 11 years, and it took me, I left him when I was 29. And I would say uh, most of my 30s, not all of them, but I'd say the first definitely 4 or 5 years after being with him, I lived in daily regret and shame about what I had let happen to me. And the way I kind of looked at it was I had this kind of little algorithm in my head where it was like, well, I was with him 11 years, so I'm guessing it's going to take me at least 5 years to kind of get over this, to get over that part of it, to forgive myself. And I think this is the point I wanted to get to, which is forgive myself and fully take responsibility for my part in it. Both of those things have to go on. I know every day we're living with some sort of regret about choices we've made. Uh, Boy, after 50 and really after 60, you start to do that a lot, because you're looking forward and you're like, I don't have enough time to fix this. I don't have enough time probably to turn this ship around and to live a life that I had wanted to live in aspects of my life. So how do I live with myself? And how do I take responsibility? How do I love myself through this? And also really learn from what I've done. And that's what I had to do in my 30s. I met my current husband pretty much right away after I'd been with Andrew and my husband, Bob. And, it was a really weird, hard time because I knew I'd made the mistake at 18 of hooking up and connecting with someone too early in my life and not finding my individual self. I knew I was a codependent. I'd gone to a lot of CODA meetings by this time and Al-Anon and things like that because I was working my way through him being an addict and my own addictions and stuff. But really my codependency was the main thing and a big part of my family life too. And I met Bob kind of right away. And even in relationship with Bob, I knew it was my responsibility to not bring codependency and learn how to do that in our relationship if I really was going to be with this man. And Bob's a great human being, like the fucking light years away from how Andrew kind of operated in the world. I mean, Andrew had a big, big heart and was very funny and was extremely smart. I mean, he's not like he was a piece of shit of a human being. It's just that he had a lot of things that just did not work for me in my life, certainly, and were troubling for him. But Bob is just this really solid person, and I really felt that from day one, and really had a lot of integrity, never lied, and was very thoughtful and all sorts of things. But so I knew, even though I was with Bob, that I had to learn how to not be codependent. I had to take responsibility for that part. And I had to learn also I think, in my 30s and my 40s, how to let myself have some grace around that I did not do my 20s the way other people did their 20s, my peer group at least, which was go to college, get involved in a career. Very few of them had families in their 20s. They had families in their 30s, and kind of found their footing as an adult in the world. And I really didn't in my 20s. And so my 30s was kind of more like my 20s. And I just had to give myself a lot of grace for a long, long time. And I still do. I'm 62. I always feel like a late bloomer. But I've also come to discover that who I am is a person who's never done. I'm always exploring the edges of who I am. I'm endlessly curious. And this is just the way my life is. It doesn't make it better or worse than anyone else's. I never found a one-track career path. I've always been a seeker. And I think I've found a way to be that, to be who I am in the world. But I do wake up sometimes and think like, oh, if I'd only been able to stick to, but I was never a person who was going to stick to fill in the blank, production or, being with my master's in psychology, being a therapist, that's my path. That's my thing. Or a life coach, I mean, I'm a person who thinks deeply and feels deeply and wants to talk about that shit. And maybe that's my lane. I get to do that in a million different ways. That's the way it is. So that part that Rich, though, talked about when people come to leaving MAGA and, they welcome them with open arms, but they do ask them to take responsibility for their actions with things. And I've certainly had to do that too. And we all have to do that. That's a big part of the healing. And to know that in the end, which is something that I think that Rich and I loved the part that we talked about this, is that we all have agency, but that we are also human and we are very, very susceptible to predatory myths and practices. And this is the same, that's like we were talking about this cultural thing with him. I mean, it was individuals, but it's a cultural phenomenon that's happening in our country and has happened to humanity forever. The othering of people in order to get power. And we do that inside of ourselves too. In order to feel the power or the allure of the myth of the new relationship or of the career, like it feeds us in some way and honors our values in another way, but feeds us in some way, that the inner saboteurs, the part of us that is willing to ignore the red flags, that is willing to do behaviors that we would normally really judge other people for, but we're willingly doing them. Those are parts of us that are living in a fight or flight kind of a way, and they are willing to do anything to survive, even if it is self-destructive, even if it is culturally destructive. And so for those of us who have times in our past where we've regretted a path we've taken, like I said, a relationship, a career, addiction, a political stance, fill in the blank for other ones. I can't think of them right now. Or if we're in it right now, if you're in something right now where it's not working, that it's not honoring who you really are, but you don't know a way out, I want you to know that the people that you think are going to 100% judge you and reject you, not all of them are going to do that. That most people, like in Rich's case, and in my case with my friends and my family, they always knew who I was and they always trusted, and they just knew that I was just stuck in something that was wrong, stuck in something that I had gone to sleep, some part of me had gone to sleep, and I was, we all have friends like this too, right? Where they're off into something and you're like, it's okay. I mean, you still love them. You still love these friends. And I know that for those of you who have family members who are stuck in addiction or a bad marriage or a career that's maybe killing them physically or mentally, or that they are in and stuck in, maybe they voted for the guy and you know that they are good people. I have so many friends who have family members who are in this situation, and they all love their family members and they all find a way to talk to them. But I want you to know that whatever you're stuck in, there are people in your life and there are people in the world who will welcome you with open arms. You can rebuild your life. You can find your freedom. And really, it's just a matter of, and I just say just, but it's not just, right? It is, though, it is a risk. It feels risky. But I want you to know it's worth it. It really is worth it. There are people in the world that are here to help you and support you, whether you're in a dangerous relationship, an addiction, whether you're in with people that don't feel right, maybe you're in a career that's killing your soul. It's okay. it's okay to listen to that small voice inside of you that knows who you really are, and to walk over the line and choose yourself, choose your life. There is a world that will greet you. I promise you. And it's important to know that. So I would love your feedback about this episode. I would love to know if you relate to anything that Rich and I talked about in our own worlds, how you see yourself moving through regret, maybe shame, how you've been stuck in situations and found your way out of them. I would love to hear from you. A couple of ways you can do that. You can find me on social media. I'm on Twitter at Kelly_Carlin. I'm on Blue Sky. I think it's kellycarlin.bluesky, whatever that is. I'm on Instagram. Kelly Carlin is here. I'm also on YouTube, and these episodes are over on YouTube. And if you want to put a comment underneath this episode and share your own life experience or how this episode hit you, that would be great. I want to thank you for being here, for listening to this. And this is life, guys. This is a huge part of life, is making choices and recalibrating over and over again. Life is just iterative choices over and over again. And learning from those choices is really all that life is about. Really, really is. And so when we are more and more able to take a step forward and to say to ourselves, nope, not quite it. Need to fix something here. Need to adjust the sails in some way so that we're going in the right direction. The more we can see our life like that, the more kindness we give ourselves, the more curiosity stays alive. And the more we understand that that's just the human experience and everyone's doing their best in the moment. It's when we really see everything as life or death in every moment, when those stakes get that high, is when we're not able to admit our own errors in decision-making. And it's when we blame the world for everything and blame others for theirs and really vilify people who've made bad choices too. If you're vilifying people who make bad choices, it means you're also vilifying yourself for that. So if we can see everything like when we talked about the tiny experiments earlier this year on the podcast as just tiny experiments, everything's a tiny experiment, and finding our way through it, life gets so much easier. So thank you for being here again. And I hope you're having a good day. Hope you have a good day. And I'll see you soon.